Sergio Ramos wasn't even supposed to be part of this story. He retired from the Spain national team back in 2023. He didn't play a single minute of this World Cup. He wasn't on the bench, wasn't in the dressing room, wasn't part of the celebration that belonged to a new generation of Spanish players. From the stands, he watched the final alongside fellow Spain legends Carles Puyol, Iker Casillas, and Cesc Fabregas, a row of retired greats, spectators to a moment none of them had a jersey for anymore. And yet, when the final whistle blew, it wasn't a Spain player who ended up in the most talked-about clip of the entire tournament. Ramos was cutting straight past the celebration that wasn't his anymore, heading toward the one man he'd spent over a decade trying to destroy. Nobody can fully explain that. Not the fans, not the pundits, not even the cameras that caught it, almost by accident. Spain had just beaten Argentina 1-0 in extra time, and confetti was already raining down. Somewhere behind him, the players who'd actually won it were living out the moment he no longer got to chase for himself. He didn't stay to watch it. Instead, he walked toward Lionel Messi, his oldest rival, the man he'd once spent years trying to break on a football pitch, now sitting alone in the wreckage of a final he'd almost single-handedly dragged Argentina into. 30 seconds later, the internet had a clip it couldn't stop watching. The moment everyone saw, but nobody understood. You've probably seen it by now. It's been replayed, re-uploaded, and picked apart by football fans on every platform that exists. Messi collapsed on the turf, unable to process what had just happened. Ramos, not a player, not a substitute, just a man who used to be his enemy, crouching beside him, saying something no one outside that moment has ever heard. Here's what makes it sting even harder. Argentina didn't just lose, they got taken apart. Ferran Torres's strike in the 106th minute ended their reign as world champions. Messi, 39 years old, playing in what everyone assumes was his final World Cup, had dragged this Argentina team to the final almost single-handedly, scoring 8 goals and setting up 4 more along the way. A body that should have broken down years ago, somehow still producing magic on the biggest stage the sport has. And it still wasn't enough. Look at the numbers from that final and they barely make sense. Spain, 65% possession, 20 shots, 32 touches inside Argentina's box. Argentina, 2 shots, 8 touches in the Spanish penalty area, for the entire match. A 1-0 scoreline that flattered them, and everyone who watched it knew it. So when the final whistle blew, Messi didn't get a hero's ending. No lap of honor. Just the grass, then the tears, then Ramos walking over. 16 years of war. To understand why that walk mattered, you have to go back, way back. Ramos and Messi weren't rivals in the polite sense of the word. They were enemies. El Clasico wasn't a football match when those two shared a pitch. It was a blood feud with a scoreboard attached. Ramos, Real Madrid's snarling, uncompromising last line of defense. Messi, Barcelona's untouchable genius. Between them, they turned Spanish football into a decade-long war that neither side ever fully won. Ramos didn't just defend against Messi, he hunted him. Reckless tackles, niggling fouls, shirt pulls that bordered on personal. There were red cards, shoving matches in front of 80,000 furious fans, a rivalry so venomous that neutral supporters picked sides the way you'd pick a side in an actual war. Watch footage from those early years, the ankle-high challenges, the shouting matches, the visible contempt, and try to picture the man who'd one day cross a World Cup final pitch just to comfort Messi in the worst moment of his career. You can't. Nobody could have. But football has a brutal, beautiful way of rewriting old stories. The PSG chapter nobody talks about enough. In 2021, everything changed, quietly, almost without anyone noticing at the time. Ramos signed for Paris Saint-Germain. Messi was already there. For 2 seasons, the two men who had spent over a decade trying to destroy each other shared a locker room, a training ground, a bus to away games. Somewhere inside those 2 years, something shifted. The rivalry that had defined both of their careers cracked open into something else entirely. Not the easy friendship of teammates who came up together, but something rarer, the hard-earned respect of two men who had pushed each other to the absolute limit and survived it. You don't spend that long at war with somebody and walk away indifferent. There's no middle ground. You either hate them forever or you understand them better than almost anyone else in the sport ever will. For Ramos and Messi, it became the second one. That's the context most people leave out when they show you the clip. This wasn't two strangers sharing a nice moment for the cameras. This was the final chapter of one of football's longest, most complicated relationships, and it didn't end with a tackle. It ended with an old rival choosing to show up anyway. What we actually know. Here's where a lot of channels are going to lie to you. They're going to invent a quote, tell you Ramos sat down and revealed some emotional monologue in an interview that never actually happened. It hasn't, not yet. As of now, Ramos hasn't gone on record, word for word, to explain exactly what he said to Messi on that pitch. What we do have is everything the moment itself told us, and everything 2 decades of history already make obvious. Ramos has never hidden his admiration for Messi as a player. Across years of interviews, through every ugly Clasico and every post-match handshake, he's been consistent about one thing. He has always rated Messi as one of, if not the greatest player the game has ever produced. That's not speculation. That's public record. Lionel Scaloni, Argentina's own manager, said something in the wreckage of that final that cuts right to the heart of why this moment hit as hard as it did. He made clear he hopes the country is proud of what Messi accomplished at this tournament, then went further, calling him the greatest footballer to have ever played the game. If Messi's own manager was willing to say that in the rawest, most painful moment of defeat, is it really such a stretch to believe his old rival felt exactly the same way, and needed him to know it before he ever left that pitch? Respect doesn't need a microphone. There's a reason this clip hit people the way it did. It wasn't staged. It wasn't content. Ramos had no medal to collect, no minutes played, no stake in the result at all. He wasn't performing for a camera crew when he crouched down next to a heartbroken 39-year-old and said whatever he said. Football hands us manufactured emotion constantly. Rehearsed post-match sound bites, PR-approved social posts, staged photo ops that feel hollow the second you look too closely. This was the opposite of all of it. This was a former rival with every reason to walk the other way, choosing instead to make sure Messi didn't sit alone in the worst moment of his career. You can't fake that. You can't manufacture it for a highlight reel. That's 16 years of rivalry and 2 years of friendship colliding in one unscripted moment, in front of 80,000 people who mostly didn't even notice it happening. The bigger picture this World Cup was never really about the trophy for Messi. It was about whether a 39-year-old body could still summon magic on command, one more time, against the best defenses on the planet. By every measure that matters, it did. The same 8 goals, the same 4 assists, the same near single-handed run to a final Argentina, by the numbers, had no business reaching. The medal around his neck said runner-up. What happened on that pitch said something else entirely. That some things in football outweigh the scoreline. Respect. History. The strange, hard-won bond between two men who spent the best years of their careers trying to break each other and somehow ended up understanding each other better than almost anyone else in the sport ever could. Sergio Ramos hasn't given the world the full story yet, in his own words, on the record. Maybe he never will. Some moments might only ever be understood by the two people who lived them. But if you've followed these two players for any part of their long, complicated history, you already know why he walked over. If you want to see the moment for yourself, the clip is everywhere, and once you know the history behind it, it hits completely differently.